Hi everyone, my name is Vince Gelman. Thank you so much for joining me today. And sadly, I need to make this video. It's uncomfortable. I really don't want to do it. But I do not tolerate child abuse. And I'm going to guess you don't either. And I cannot stand by and not speak to what I see is happening. And I have written about it, I have made other videos about it, and I'm going to keep on going in terms of naming the intolerable. But I just need to speak now about what's happening because it's getting to new levels of absurdity and cruelty. And our children are suffering. And unfortunately, parents are not seeing what's happening. Teachers are not seeing what's happening. Librarians are not seeing what's happening. School boards are not seeing what's happening. But many people are waking up, and boy, is it great to see angry mama bears and papa bears speaking out. And we've seen videos of them, getting really angry in addressing school boards and saying they will not tolerate their children being racialized and sexualized, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what's happening right now, is that children are being so manipulated and groomed for a bigger objective. And that is being controlled ultimately by the oligarchs, by the dark forces, and who have had these plans in work for a long time. And a big part of their agenda is definitely the racialization and the sexualization of children and the confusion of children, to make them confused about who they are. And a big part of that comes from the transgender hysteria that is becoming viral. Now, before I go any further, I want to make clear that I have absolutely no problem with a mature, informed adult choosing to transition, to become transgender. I have no problem with that. Just like I have no problem if someone's gay or any other orientation. I don't have a problem with that. I wouldn't be able to do the work I do as a healer if I was homophobic or transphobic or phobic towards anyone. So if a mature adult makes that massive choice, that's their choice. That's none of my business. However, when it comes to the intentional manipulation and grooming of children, that is my business. That is my business. As it should be all our business as adults on this planet who care for children. Whether we have children or not, I don't have children, but I care for children. I'm an overseer of children. I'm a protector of children. I've written a book about children. I've written extensively about children. I'm a fierce advocate for their innocence, for their creativity, for their wild spirit, for the purity of who they are. But that purity of mind and that innocence is being horrifically taken advantage of. And it's appalling. It's disgusting. It is downright abuse. And it's under the guise of let's foster greater inclusion and diversity. Greater inclusion and diversity. These liberal values are being inverted, perverted, and co-opted for a larger, darker agenda, just like the man-made climate change hoax is. And I'm not one to say that we definitely need to stop polluting and destroying our planet. Absolutely. But climate change is being inverted, perverted, and co-opted for a larger agenda. And we can see that play out in how farmers are being essentially, they're being attacked and they're having their farms taken away. I have a statistic here in the Netherlands. There's now up to 17,000 farmers who are now no longer farming and 11,000 farms that are now gone. The Netherlands, not coincidentally, the second biggest exporter of food worldwide. Why would the dark forces target the Netherlands of all countries? Why would they focus on them so much? It's because they are the second biggest exporter of food worldwide, and a big part of their agenda is to make us more and more dependent on them and their handouts, including food, or what will seem to them, they call it food. For us, it's not food. But let's not go down that road too far. The point is that seemingly good agendas like climate change are being distorted, used for their nefarious purposes, as is the liberal values of inclusion and diversity. So this is the age of discernment right now. This is the age of discernment where we need to read between the lines, because what is happening is they're coming after our kids, bottom line. And what they're also doing is they're taking away the rights of the parent to be protectors and to have a say on what their child chooses. And so this means that increasingly children who are very young can make the choice to transition, to become transgender, because they're feeling stressed, because they're feeling anxious, what we call gender dysphoria. There are forces in play to stop parents from overseeing those decisions and making it legally impossible for them to stop their children from making a decision to become transgender. It is part of the larger plan to destroy the nuclear family, to destroy the power that parents have to take care of their kids and basically hand the kids over to the state. What if gender dysphoria is anxiety and depression? And what if that anxiety and depression being expressed around the context of gender confusion actually is not really about gender, but it's actually about something else, something deeper? Maybe they're just confused and depressed and anxious because they're a kid. I remember feeling anxious and confused, sometimes depressed when I was a kid, sometimes low, sometimes lost. But my increasing anxiety as a kid, and I didn't know this as a kid, was because of how much I was abused as a child. How much trauma I had in me, how much programming was being instilled in me through the media, through video games, through the education system. Trauma and programming. But you see, what's happening is gender dysphoria and transgender hype is now being so seeded into the collective consciousness that now what's happening is that it's becoming a first go reason to explain why a child is struggling. And it's a first go reason for a child to explain why they're struggling. They're watching lots of TikTok videos. They're hearing their friends talk about becoming trans. They're seeing media propaganda about becoming trans. So it's in the collective field. And so, well, maybe he or she is trans. You see, when you and I were a kid, If a boy was interested in playing with dolls and a girl was interested in playing with action figures, that was normal. That was fine. But now, well, it's a good chance. It means they're possibly trans, or they are trans. And this is really, really ideal for biopharmaceuticals, isn't it? How much money do they make off of these pills, these toxic medications? Puberty blockers, hormones, etc., etc. Then there's the irreversible, life-changing surgeries that take place as well. And then you hear people saying, well, there are kids who are really distressed, like really, really anxious, really on the edge, and they're saying, I'm trans, I'm trans, I'm trans. Well, you, as a fierce protector, need to step in and say, well, maybe what's needed is, one, my child needs therapeutic support. Not to become trans, the child needs emotional, mental support, maybe some really good play therapy. Or maybe the child needs to just go outside and have the parents usher them outside and take them to play, because play is the greatest therapy for them. Get them outdoors, get them playing. But the parents also need to do their healing work and to say, where am I bringing toxicity in the home? Where are we, husband and wife, bringing toxicity in the home and adding to our children's anxiousness, their depression? What are our children being exposed through in school, which has become a huge it's a massive propaganda machine now, more than ever. Major indoctrination, a major tool for the dark forces. How much of that is influencing them? How much of their favorite TV shows, which are increasingly being hijacked by the dark forces, how much are those shows being influenced? What do we need to take away from them and protect them from, so that they're not being infiltrated with viral programming, which is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger? See, this is the thing. The parents have to become fierce protectors now. They have to wake up and protect their kids. I don't have kids, but if I had kids, in no way would they be in the indoctrination machine that we call education. I would be very careful about what shows they watch. Very careful. We have to do this now. Social media, TikTok, is so toxic. It is brainwashing kids, brainwashing them to make them think they're trans when they're not. And again, I don't have any issues with someone being trans. But here's the bigger agenda, everyone. Well, actually, let me say this first. And this is something that's not talked about. And I'm going to say it because I need to say it. It is my feeling that a big reason why children are confused and want to become trans is because they have unprocessed sexual trauma. Unprocessed sexual trauma. Perverse, reverse. Perverse, reverse. With perverted sexual energy, a corrupted identity comes with that. And it reverses you. It orientates you to a different direction, a transition, transgender. I'm not saying this as a 100% blanket statement, but what I'm saying is, in my opinion, a big reason why there is so much confusion, there is what's called gender dysphoria, is because of the amount of sexual trauma that is perverting the identity, distorting the identity. Let me remind you of something, and this is from experience as someone who is highly trained in trauma and trauma resolution. There are a lot of people out there who are walking around with huge amounts of unprocessed sexual trauma. There are a lot of people who don't even know they were sexually abused. They've suppressed it that much. And at last I checked, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys have been sexually abused. That's a lot of sexual trauma on this planet. And we have people who are very, very interested in continuing to sexualize our children because it feeds their perverted pedophilic tendencies. The largest, fastest growing criminal activity in the world is human trafficking. It is a $150 billion annual $150 billion annual enterprise, human trafficking. How much of that is child sex trafficking and exploitation? A ton. People well in power that have been front stage in the media, going back decades, are very involved in this, are very involved and very interested in making sure that children are sexually abused, because the dark forces are very committed to keeping their satanic rituals going, in which they feed off of the terror of children parasitically, giving them a sense of immortality, because they're so deprived of true, loving, pure life force. They must parasitically take it from children in their satanic rituals. So let's sexualize children. That's their goal. They want to sexualize children. So this is in the collective. It is a thick, thick part of the collective consciousness is sexual perversion. And it is why there's so much sexual trauma on the planet now and historically. And they want that to remain the same. So, to my point, perverse reverse, a big reason as I see it, intuitively, and with my professional hat on, a big reason why children are feeling confused is because of the unprocessed sexual trauma they have in their system, and how much of that is intergenerational. How much of that is passed down through the genetic lines from mom's line, dad's line. Memories go back far. Let me take you into an experiment, and I cannot quote who did this, where it comes from, but there was a mouse, a female mouse, and what they did is they kept presenting her with the smell, with a rose, with an actual rose. Or it might have been the actual scent of a rose from some sort of liquid. Anyways, they gave her the scent of a rose, and they kept presenting this rose to her, the smell of it. And what happened after a while is every time they presented this fragrance of the rose to the mouse, they would shock her. So now, even when they presented the fragrance of the rose to the mouse without the shock, there was a physical, biological reaction. There was a physical, biological reaction because now the fragrance of the rose had been coupled with the physical shock. Well, that mouse had a baby, and that mouse had a baby, and that mouse had a baby, and that mouse had a baby. 5 generations down, they present the smell of a rose without the shock to that 5th generation mouse, and guess what? That mouse had the same physical reaction without the shock, just with the smell of the rose. Memories get passed down. So how much, given the history of trauma on this planet, and I know from doing thousands of hours of work with my clients in my healing practice that their parents and their grandparents had it worse. So how much sexual trauma, unprocessed sexual trauma, unprocessed painful memories around sexual abuse have been passed down to us? How much are we carrying forward from our past lives? That's another thing to understand. We don't come here as a blank slate. We come here with unfinished business. How much sexual trauma are we bringing in from past lives? Down through intergenerational or ancestral trauma, and of course, the toxic sexual violations of this lifetime that may not be just about what happens at home. With our parents, it could be with a babysitter, it could be with a friend's parent, it could be something at school, it could be, as we know, with priests. Okay, so understand that sexual trauma is rampant, and we are waking up to that. And that is a big reason why they are sexualizing our children. Why suddenly are drag queens being brought into libraries and schools with their breasts augmented or fake breasts augmented in short skirts, and they're twerking and grinding and sprawling and crawling all over the floor? Why are they suddenly appearing all over the world in libraries and schools for story time? Why are kids now being exposed in school to these books that have highly explicit sexual content? Why is this all happening at once? Because it is part of the dark agenda. It is part of the dark agenda. And one thing I want to say, and this is a key thing I want you to understand. Transgenderism, and I'm again speaking of the agenda from the dark forces that is being supported by woke trans activists who are incredibly naive and being played. Transgenderism, in its corrupted form, is a stepping stone to transhumanism. Transgenderism is a stepping stone to transhumanism. If you confuse people enough, you confuse the identity enough, well, then they're more primed and prone for an implant. They're more primed and prone to be integrated into artificial intelligence, to becoming transhuman. The whole jab was a big part of that. You're putting a synthetic concoction that enters the holy ground of our DNA, manipulates our DNA, destroys the chemistry, and makes our DNA more synthetic, more artificial, and primes us for artificial intelligence. What's the opposite of artificial intelligence? Sentient intelligence. So when we have a pure, healthy biological DNA, we are open to sentient intelligence. But when you corrupt it, you corrupt the identity, you corrupt the physiology, you make people more weakened, more disempowered, more interested in an artificial identity. So transhumanism or transgenderism is part of the strategy to make people prone to a transhuman world. In part, another thing I want to say is you might know, that young people are being manipulated as part of the man-made climate change hoax. Young people are being manipulated to fear, if not hate, carbon dioxide, right? When right now we're actually at perfectly fine levels for carbon dioxide. There's been times in the past on this planet where we've had far more carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide really helps create the lush green foliage. It is oxygen to the plants. We're fine with carbon dioxide. I believe we need to stop destroying our planet with all these different ways we pollute the earth and with the the seismic blasting in the ocean that's just destroying marine life. There's many ways we need to change the way we are in relationship to the earth. But I want you to understand that as far as the dark forces are concerned, they are purposely demonizing carbon dioxide, because of the anti-human agenda they have. What is the body made from? It's a carbon-based body. If you get young people fearing and demonizing carbon, well, that is a nice ploy, a clever ploy, I should say, to get them to turn against their own natural biology. Isn't that just fitting with the other ways that the dark forces are getting us to go against natural biology by saying there's no such thing as a biological man or a biological woman? They're basically eradicating what is natural and holy and true and moving us to all that is false and fake, a complete inversion of truth. So this is a lot of information I'm giving you. I want to also say, it's really heartbreaking for me to have to create this video, and there's some footage I've been seeing. I saw kids in Europe that in school who are shivering. They're so cold because now they don't have energy to warm their classrooms because of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, which is all part of the plan to disempower us. Kids they got blankets around them in school. They're so cold. What's going to happen with more and more purposely created energy crises? What's going to happen when people cannot heat their homes? What's going to happen to a pregnant mother when she is so cold? In the Netherlands, they're now in school feeding children, what's called here, mealworms in the Netherlands. I saw a video of kids being fed mealworms. Now here's a question for you. If you're a parent or even if you're not a parent, would you want your child being fed mealworms? Here's another thing to think about. Those kids that were fed mealworms, how many of their parents knew that that was happening or gave their consent? So there's a movement towards feeding us crickets, insects. This is part of the destruction of the food supply, the hijacking of our land. And yes, one more way that children are being abused. We're not meant to eat worms. We're not meant to eat crickets, insects. As I see it, there's toxins in there. There's toxins in there that can do harm, but that's okay for Big Pharma. Just like the manipulation of the body through transgender surgery, irreversible transgender surgery practices, is big money. It's big money for pharma. So this is largely motivated by money as well. Power, money, greed, control. It is cruel beyond understanding. You see, the wake up for people is to go from, I know there's some corruption in government, to recognizing there is huge amount of evil running this world that has infiltrated our major institutions, media, entertainment, government, health, and yes, our education system. That is the big wake up. And when we wake up to that level, as adults, as parents, as teachers, as librarians, we then have a sacred duty to speak truth to power, to not tolerate it, and to fiercely protect our children. And so this is my summoning in this video. This is my fierce summoning. And thank you for listening and watching. Please share. Please comment. Please like. Please subscribe. I have online healing and activation ceremonies coming up. That's going to support your journey of healing and empowerment and awakening. I'll put a link for that in the description. Other than that, take good care and take good care of our children. Blessings to you.